to another First Minister's Questions review by three men in a blog. As you can realise by now, even if you're a regular viewer or listener, you will see there are four of us and we have become a regular band. To be honest, it is a bit like going to band practice every week coming in here.
Never been in a band.
Oh, well,
me neither.
but it's a bit like that.
I quite like bands.
Yeah, band practice. So, today's FMQs, a high or a low? I think it was fairly middle of the road when you look back over 6 years we've been doing this. I think
Not
so.
yet standing.
However, it was very interesting, I think, let's just let's give Alex Grant the first chance to. What's your overall view of what happened today?
Well, I think the opposition went for the obvious targets, which were you can't have Sterling, you can't criticise anybody for voting, for saying they support the No campaign, and effectively saying if we vote for independence, they'll take the orders away from government.
From the shipbuilding.
So I mean, I think they were all the obvious targets. I think Alex dealt with them very well, all things considered. I think, as he suggested at the start of the discussion, the white paper, he alluded to the white paper as just wait and see. Well, I hope the white paper is better than was suggested both in a comment that was in there and a comment I got from someone else who attended the conference at which this Colin Mackay, I think his name is, actually spoke. Because I have to say, he sounds like a fucking, accident waiting to happen. If he said some of the things that they were trying to use against the government there, and I didn't hear any rebuttal, he didn't say that, then the guy is a loose cannon. He actually said at this conference, which was to discuss, well, what's going to happen about constitutional issues, because someone from the Constitutional Commission, well, funnily enough, Elliot Bulmer, who was referred to in that as never having been criticised, which is a joke in itself, spoke at that conference, and this guy, who was allegedly Salmon's chief strategist, made a comment to the effect of, well, we can't answer everything. You need to trust politicians. Now, I wasn't there. But according to what John Drummond tells me, it was a car crash, a complete car crash. So some of the people the government has behind them leave me extremely worried. But coming back to the point, I think all of what was said by way of attack on the government and the independence position, I hope is going to be, in a number of respects, it can't answer the 5 million questions, but in a number of respects it has to be addressed in the white paper in a relatively substantive
fashion.
fashion.
That's a fair start.
That's the point.
That's a fair start. I'd like to draw the viewers and listeners' attention to various things that did come up. The lack of Labour MPs voting to bring down the bedroom tax. That was an issue, and I think Alex Salmond did very well with that.
Sure.
The 5 million questions organisation and the row about that. When that so-called independent think tank was set up, David Torrance was appointed director.
Yeah.
David Torrance, the famous, deputy director, he was appointed, and the press release said he was an independent journalist. Independent journalist, my ass.
Yeah.
He used to be an advisor for the Tory party.
Yeah, he's a Tory.
He's a complete unionist.
Yeah.
But to pretend that you're that this so-called academic institution is independent is what is the crime. And this guy deserves whatever his name is, Chris Whatley.
Whatley, yeah.
He has been in charge of this think
professor.
tank. He's allowed it to be portrayed as independent when it's not, and it's nothing to do with academia. There's my argument about that. That's got legs.
Salmond is accepting it is, but going back on the self-inflicted PR disaster, which Salmond alluded to, which was the bedroom tax, just as a point of information, if all these 47 had turned up, then their 47 corresponding had turned up. What I find really disturbing about it is they paired when they shouldn't have paired, because basically they only pair and go off when it's insubstantial, non-important subject. So all those people out there,
We're talking
they're
about
getting,
votes.
yeah,
The
the
vote in
way in
Westminster.
Westminster, all those people out there, they're getting screwed with the bedroom tax. You're not important at all to the Labour Party that put up the motion, because to go off and pair, you have to do it with the whip. So it was right down the line. Appalling.
I'm sorry, I mean, it was a tactical error. Every single Labour MP in the country that could be there should have been there,
Yeah.
forcing
The
the Liberal
Liberals.
Democrats to cut their own throats.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was a complete.
That was it.
tactical error.
It was allowing the Liberal Democrats to opt out, to abstain without abstaining by not being there, and the PR. I mean, Sawa's not being there.
I know, but they're not getting any headline PR in the press of any
Apparently, the
significance.
Daily Record's
No,
ripped into them.
the Daily Record got into it this morning, but
I'm
your analysis is spot on. But whether it does the Labour Party any damage,
But there's one very
Well,
interesting.
it does Sawa's
Yeah.
damage. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You can't stand on TV waving a piece of paper under Nicola Sturgeon's nose, insisting on her signature, and then not turn up to vote for it.
if nobody criticises you, you can.
Oh, well.
But there's another thing with Sawa there as well. Right, this is all about, as they call it, the spare room subsidy. Now, all Scottish MPs, I'll give you one guess, who claimed the most money,
Yeah.
a multi-millionaire, 25,000 quid.
Plus, yeah.
Over and way above all other Labour MPs.
Yeah.
Was
This
Mrs.
is
Sawa.
expensive. Yeah.
No, this
No.
is just, look, this is just for
Accommodation.
accommodation. This is just
Oh,
subsidy for accommodation.
Yes, no, okay, no, fair enough.
No,
no,
it's
yeah.
total.
500 quid a week.
65,000 he gets a year as an MP, plus another 60,000 plus.
No, that's 60,000. That 60,000 goes for his offices. I mean,
Well, but another
25 grand in his
62,000
pocket.
62,000 in expenses. That includes his office and his
Yeah.
staff in his office, which run at about, I think, 25,000. I think.
I know, but
No,
is any Labour
Brendel
supporter in
is-
government going to be aware of that?
Well, they will be surely if it's
It is,
going
it is
to me.
significantly
I hope
more.
you're right.
2 assistants, offices, office costs. You're
What,
probably looking at
sorry,
that.
just one sentence.
Yeah, yeah.
What it shows me is that, in actual fact, they think they are so untouchable
Oh.
because they don't get critical analysis, that they can do that with alacrity and they don't damn well care. Although, interestingly enough, I agree with you 100%. They had an opportunity to seriously embarrass the Liberals and they blew it completely.
Didn't even occur to them because they're mates.
No, I think it might be more to that. I
No,
don't-
these people
I
are
think-
paired.
No,
are
I
paired with
think
people
in the
for years.
Scottish context that they might not want to be upsetting too many Liberal Democrats.
Yeah,
Well,
Well,
are there
they
any
sit
left
on the
here?
same platform. They sit on the same platform as them.
yeah.
The Secretary of State for Scotland is a Liberal Democrat who
Yes.
did turn up and vote against the bedroom
Thought it was a
tax.
thug. Never mind.
Vote for the bedroom tax, rather.
You voted for the bedroom tax.
Well, he voted against the amendment.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
voted to keep
Yeah, he
it.
voted to
You
keep
voted
it.
to
He,
keep it.
he
Yeah.
took the party line.
All right.
So, I mean, from that point of view, if you want this guy, if you want to be able to interact with this guy as part of the Better Together, the No campaign, you're not going to be upsetting too many people,
Well,
are you?
if that's the case, then Norrie, it wasn't a technical error. It was a tactic. They decided that if they went and participated and forced the Liberals to be embarrassed, it wasn't in their interests in terms of the Scottish debate.
So it's a deliberate,
Which is
insulting.
a tactical error
premeditated
for
snub
every single
to all
person
these
who
people.
has been hit
I
with
think
the
so,
bedroom
yeah.
tax.
All right, then, gentlemen, I think we've had quite a decent warm-up. 10 minutes. Let's try and focus on the performances. Let's point out that we really didn't get a question this
Thank
week.
God for a
So,
little mercy.
so it's 1 week and 3 he doesn't get a question.
Yeah, something like
But you would think that, I still stick to this, you would think that the
Patrick Harvey,
independent
etc.,
group,
yeah.
Margaret MacDonald, the independents, the Greens, would at least get a question that week when Willie Rennie doesn't he? But it doesn't happen, so
It's not democratic. It's bad news.
Well, it's the presiding officers. Sorry,
Well,
SNP. We don't want to see something that could look more attractive than the government at the moment. Being throwing that in, yeah, they can throw the Labour, they can throw the Tories, the Liberals, and everybody will. Blah, but you
Yeah.
can't have something
All right.
that's slightly more
Well,
attractive.
let me ask Norrie to start with. What did you think of the performances?
I thought Joanne did quite well today.
Hmm?
She's still reading from the script, but she asked some quite difficult questions. She opened the door to let Alex bring in the non-attendance for
Yeah.
the bedroom tax vote at Westminster. She then quoted Colin Mackay, the SNP advisor guy's.
She attacked the
football.
currency union position.
Apparently said he has apparently said they need a plan B. Not having been there at the time, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised, as Sam had hinted, that the whole thing was taken out of context, because she's really quite good at doing that.
Well, they all are, yeah.
But then Salmon came back with, Alistair Darling, currency union's the best idea.
Yeah.
Well, can I point out to you there appear to have been two possible policy shifts which will possibly be identifiable when the white paper comes out. One is on the 3p reduction on UK corporation tax, which has been hinted at that that's been dropped, and the other one is the dogmatic position on a currency union. I'm not saying that.
The thing about it is, I mean, if they can't get the currency union, they can still keep using the pound. Nobody can stop them using the pound
Exactly.
because it's tradable.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, they simply turn around and say, right, well, we're going to use the pound. Now,
Yeah, that's not easily.
Scotland's fiscal position is stronger than England's. The markets go on money. They don't go on what colour you vote. They don't go on what colour your rosette is. They go on how viable, what the risk factor is. And I don't think it would be a problem for Scotland.
And Standard & Poor's and Moody's, when they were asked a hypothetical question on how they would rate Scotland, gave it a treble A+. So use the currency in the use the currency in the short term. That they didn't answer first because it was hypothetical, but then they were had their arms twisted. This was when everybody else was losing their treble A.
Yeah, but that's what needs to be emphasised here is because the media don't. Although interestingly enough, the Sunday Times, as we were discussing earlier, produced an interesting and much more accurate analysis of the relativity of Scotland and England last week. But what John Swinney and the rest of the SNP have to do is to actually say, not only is it sensible and desirable as per Alistair Darling, if they refuse to do it, taking your point, the markets would go wappy. So please, if you're saying you wouldn't do it, then stand up now and say it, just in the same way as Brewer asked Carmichael last night.
Yeah.
If you are actually suggesting that there's any doubt about Scotland being accepted in the European community, why don't you get back down the road to your pals and say to them, I'd like to write to the European community in Brussels and say, can you advise us as to what the position will be? And they won't do it, because on both of those things, they know that all they're doing is putting fear into the marketplace. The idea that they definitely categorically say we will not tolerate a currency union, the markets would react, as was alluded to a moment ago, very negatively.
Well, I'll point out, wait a
England
minute, but point out that when it comes to the value of the currency, it has been, it's anecdotal, but people tell me that if you ask for an exchange rate for a Scottish pound in Hong Kong, you get a better rate than you do for the...
It's not anecdotal. It's actually quoted in Hong Kong.
Okay.
You get a better rate for a Scottish.
Right, let's focus back onto the performances. So you thought overall...
Well, I thought Joanne did quite well today, actually. Her questions were barbed. I don't think she performed particularly well. I was very pleased to see Alex stand up and go, yes, and sit down.
Yes, you've been waiting for that for a while.
He does that well.
Yes.
Ruth went on this idea that some member of the Scottish Government phoned some professor's boss asking him why the professor chaired a Better Together meeting, and he answered that well. He said he can chair any meeting he wants, he's quite happy for him to run the 5 million question thing that's happening at Dundee University, blah 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 blah. She got up and then said, well, can you categorically assure me that no Scottish minister will ever again criticise anybody for anything as long as their arse points down? And Salmon totally ignored it and said, well, what do you want me to do? I support democracy, blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I know, but you should never have to answer the question. I think the point is, whilst the question was, from our perspective, a totally legitimate one, it was only ever going to be used against you. You can't ask questions like that.
It was a major faux pas. But what I found
phone
interesting,
Dundee University and say, is it right?
But she didn't. It's now apparent that there was no phone
No,
call.
no, that's not what was said.
That is exactly
That's
what
what
was said.
Salmon said.
No,
Straight
Salmon
away,
said
said there
there
was
was
no
no
phone call.
phone
No phone call.
Oh, well,
So
I didn't hear
was
about
it an
that.
email? If it was an email, why is it not being published? Did she bump into him at a drinks do? You
Well,
heard?
If that's the case, he should
No,
have
we're
said
not-
it.
Stop being bored.
We're wandering around a bit here. Let's carry on. Just
Well,
try and
should
keep
we
the
go-
structure and then have a sum up at the end, because we're just wandering around.
Well, I don't think we're wondering. I mean, the fact
The
is,
Englishman's getting petulant.
the fact is, you know, the opposition, the no camp, and the opposition in Holyrood, by definition, will always attack the government. What you need to do is make sure whether it's the government minister asked the question one way or another, and she did raise the issue about Whately, and his chief strategic advisor standing on a platform. And let me tell you, I have it on very good authority from somebody I trust that this guy made a holy prat of himself on this platform in a whole host of different ways. You cannot let loose cannons out, because all you're doing is
Right
giving
then, Alex,
ammunition.
can I just take a grip of this meeting, this panel debate? Right now, you guys have wandered way off the normal subject, and I was going to suggest we had 10 minutes on on general things before we even got going. I was going to suggest we can come back to that at the end, but right now, nobody's answering any questions. So, Alex,
Well,
shut up.
I've answered the question.
Phil wants to speak about the performances, I hope, and what
Oh,
happened in Holyrood
That would
today.
be nice. I've forgotten what I was going to say.
She felt.
Bullshit.
Joanne, yeah, what Norris said, I thought she did very well. I just wish I'd been listening to it on a radio, then it would have probably sounded better. But watching even some of the things that, you know, shut your eyes, that's what I was listening to. Good initiatives with a head stuck to this bit of paper, even on the most innocuous thing. Sorry, it puts you off, because I just see her as a First Minister standing up in front with other leaders around the world and in Europe, sitting there with their head stuck to a pathetic script. But it sounds good, again, when you don't look at it. Salmon, I think, was in command, confident today, quite chirpy and happy, because he seemed to have had a very good week in China.
Yeah.
He had a wee period where he was flicking through his notes looking for something, I noticed.
Oh yeah, but Ruth Davis, you know, I mean, they're trying to implant this idea of these nasty nats intimidating people. When she comes from a family of basically thoroughly evil creatures, you know, Ian, David, a family. They're a family, you know. Definitely. I mean, there's genetic link of.
No, you mean the
nastiness.
Davidsons?
Yeah, they're Ian, Duncan, whatever you call it.
She's
These
not related to
creatures.
him.
Well,
She
of course,
is now.
they're all related. They all have this
They're all Tories. you see.
green blood. Yeah, of course, yes. They're all Tories. They're all a thoroughly nasty party.
The intimidating. There were a number of times that were.
Intimidating and murdering, by the way.
That, I think we're
Yeah.
going to see this one run. I think
Well, they've been running it for
the
ages.
Secretary of State for Scotland has made a big issue of it.
Yeah.
Very good point on the
Just
Twitter
that.
line this morning was, well, let's see the tweets. Some guy's gone back 10 weeks through his tweets and can find nothing
Yeah.
at all.
But we're talking here about Professor Chris Whately.
No, no.
Yeah.
5
but I
million
mean-
questions.
No, you're not just talking about that.
No, no,
Carmichael.
talking about Carmichael claiming that he'd been called nasty names.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, is that a story?
Well, he was trying to insinuate it's part of the intimidation thing.
No,
with
that-
Professor Whatley being
and
intimidated.
it's part of the previous storyline about cybernats. Look, you know,
Oh, it's
there-
an old
there
one,
is-
I know.
it's an old one, but it doesn't make it a bad one. If you can keep portraying to the media that the Nats are populated by nasty people. Because I mean, interestingly enough, on Twitter this week, I said to a couple of people who were going on, having a go at Ian Smart, for example, because Ian Smart was saying, well, why is anybody complaining about Labour in Westminster on the bedroom tax? That's not the story. The story is the Scottish Government alleviating the bedroom tax. And people start engaging with them. Well, I have to say, Nats should stop arguing with people saying stuff like that. Don't go back and argue with them. Put the message out to the people in any way possible that, do you realise this is what's happened? Don't have a punch-up which might actually deteriorate into somebody writing a tweet that can then be used against them. Forget it.
All right.
Do you want
all right.
a first person?
I'm going to speak because the three of you are wandering around the houses.
I'm not
voting
Well,
for
I haven't.
the
I've had
point.
about 30 seconds just on what happened.
And even you drifted straight away. I mean, I don't mind having a general discussion, but I think it should
We're
be
not
grouped a
drifting.
bit better together. And bear in mind that when I'm sitting here listening to you guys as chair, my head is constantly aware of what the viewer and listener is getting. And sometimes when you wander off the subject, the viewer and listener hasn't a clue what you're talking about. Because it's too, what's the word? Anal.
Right.
Well, it's not anal.
Right.
It's not. There is a
Nori, help me
consistent
here.
theme
Let's
Right.
try and focus.
Guys, I keep going, I mean, okay, we bring up a subject and it does wander a bit, but because that's where the ammunition is. I just feel that it was very down today, and what worries me is it wasn't about real politics. It was all about slagging the SNP, not the government of the day, but the SNP's independence stance. Neil Finlay asked a question about the NHS.
Very good. The question.
It was a good question.
Well, it wasn't. I mean, overtime spend. He's
That's
a
not
Labour
good.
MP. Why should he have a problem with people working overtime?
Well, I've got a problem with it.
It's a trade unionist as well.
You're not a Labour MP.
No, but
I mean,
no,
if,
but
more
if I was
people,
a-
if people are getting more money in their pockets,
No,
for
no,
doing
no, no,
extra
no, no,
hours.
no. Oh, extra overtime, Nori, suggests lack of organisation.
Yeah.
Extra overtime also suggests that you're running your NHS with the number of staff you need, and you have to up it when.
Well, that's not how the answer came out.
Well,
No.
that's-
Jenny Mara got censured by the presiding officer.
So did Mahone at the back.
And
Yeah. And she asked the First Minister to sit down.
no, so she could censure the
She did,
Jenny Mara.
I know that, but
was-
she didn't censor John Lamont for calling him a fool.
Well, that was another thing. There was a fool. There was intimidating.
Well, actually,
Lots of fairly aggressive
intimidating,
language.
See
I
the
think you
bit
could
with
say.
intimidating. Can I give you a first-person account? Right, since Tuesday, as a Labour Party member,
Yeah.
and been on the Facebook page for it, and on the whole way they handled it, I thought it was appalling down in Westminster. I have been myself. I just put it straight on and said this. To which I just got subjected then to intimidation, name calling,
Yeah.
all sorts of things. So one or two coming in going, you've got a point, but then it's shouted down and great things. I mean, it'd be just an oppositionist doing nothing but slagging off the Labour Party and all the rest, all that time. So you sit back. That much to do that I'm actually going to, when I go back and when I find out to do it, because you know how technophobe I am, is to knock that group off my iPad. They can basically, sorry for the language, they can go fuck themselves, really, right?
I don't mind a bit of industrial language. It's no harm in that. We're not exactly a regulated
They are
broadcaster.
Brit-Nat trolls. They have no idea of the conception of democracy, which is the open, honest and transparent exchange of views. They
So
live in a
that's-
bubble.
So your point is that the question of who's intimidating who,
They're all at it.
they're all at it. That's a good point.
Well, talking about censorship, intimidation, free speech, I noted that somebody posted the crowd that follow the Better Together Facebook. They average 35% of all their comments are taken down. 35%.
Yeah. Because they won't tolerate any criticism.
You can't ask a question.
No, you can't.
It comes
No,
down.
no, there's no question
So
about that.
they've no left.
I don't know what Yes do, but I suspect Yes must
Yes
be.
runs at about 10%.
The most intolerant group of all are the No group.
Yeah.
No way about it. They're ultra Brit Nats. And if you've seen the mayhem they've caused over the planet the last 300 years, it's the same group of people.
And that's fair enough. I would say it is noticeable, and this has been going on for at least a couple of years. It is noticeable that the people who get most worked up about this referendum are the extreme edge of the no people. They really, it can be quite scary. They're the ones that I'd fear if there was a, after the referendum, and if somebody feels as though they've had it snatched away by some gerrymandering or something, it'll be the no campaign.
Well, probably the Orangemen.
Well, exactly. The
was-
Orangemen are always
the
their
other
threat.
thing that popped up this week from an ex-Labour, was it an East Lothian ex-Labour MP who suggested that win or lose, win the referendum,
Oh,
and
Nicol.
they'll be asking for a second.
No, no.
I think
Well,
that's Adam
Adam
Ingdon.
Ingdon.
He was Defence Minister.
Right,
It's
right,
MP
but,
East Kilbride.
But there's two observations you make about that. Number one, it suggests that the no camp are starting to have some loose bowel movements, because you wouldn't say that otherwise. But if you read Bateman this week on that subject, he is spot on. Contrary to what was mentioned in there about the Edinburgh Agreement was a win for Cameron, it was anything but a win for Cameron. As Bateman quite rightly points out, and this is important, Bateman said, if Cameron could have said, referendum,
No.
carry on. You have your fucking referendum. We're not giving you a Section 30. You carry on. And if you vote for it, we'll reject it, or we'll get somebody to object to it legally anyway, and then you'll be left in limbo. That would have been a far better place to be than the suggestion from Ingram, which is, well, if you only win by 51%, what the Labour Party are telling us here, and this, again, Ingram didn't get covered properly in the press on this, what he is saying is, a vote then has to be taken in Westminster if we vote yes. We vote yes legally in the end of it. I mean, it is morally, philosophically, internationally perhaps mumble grunt. But the fact is, the Labour Party via Ingram are actually suggesting, well, if you vote 51%, I'm going to stand up now as a Commons and say, don't let them have their independence.
No, it needs to be
Fuck off.
constitutional. It needs to be at least 2/3.
Tell
That's
me
what they'll come up with.
No.
That's what they'll come up with.
Once the vote's taken, if it's won,
Well, you know what's going to
they won't
happen
do
then?
anything about it
If they,
because it'll go straight to the UN.
if they do anything, no, yeah, but that can go out. You know what will happen then?
Well,
Which
you
they
saw-
probably want actually. Is that thing called violence?
You were saying the Scottish government will go straight
Incitement?
to
That's
the
what
UN.
they're doing.
Well, they'll go to the
No.
UN because it's the British government have signed up to self-determination.
I know that, but the point I'm making is Parliament has to sign it off, and,
Oh, yeah,
and
they
if,
could
if
find
we
a way
win
with it.
if we win by 51%, please do not assume that will mean okay, fine, let's start the negotiation for the next 18 months. End of. That is not necessarily what's going to happen, and that's what's being suggested. And Cameron made a huge mistake. He should never have signed up to this agreement. He should never have come to Edinburgh and sat up there in the Scottish office and had his photograph taken signing this and giving equal status to Salmon. It was complete lunacy.
Yeah, but they don't care. What will happen is they will, if you get it that close and you just win, there'll be prevarication, then there'll be incitement. You have those three little services that were getting interviewed there the other days that'll be going around, and then they'll be calling a state of emergency. And sorry, they've done it just across the water in a part of the UK. Why do you think you are any different?
Well, let's have a go at a wee bit of scoring here, and then if we can have another chat after we've done that.
Right, Phil. Alex.
Yeah, looking really, really happy and chirpy and all that, but he didn't hit Sawa, so I'll give him an 8. Joanne, yeah, I thought she was quite confident. If I closed my eyes, I'd have given her a 7, but I have my eyes open, so I'll give her 5.
I'll give her 5.
Ruth
Yes,
can go and boil her head in her witch's cauldron, and that'll do me.
So that's a
Oh, and the presiding officer, yeah, she didn't pull up, but then she did pull up mine, so I'll give her a 5 as well.
Alex.
I give Alex 9. I thought he was very competent, his usual self, and he was very ebullient. So 9. He's rarely perfect. I thought he was better last week, and that's why I give him 10. Jan, I give her 5. She's reading from a script again, although as Phil points out quite rightly, if you weren't watching it on TV, then you done that. So actually, but anyway, 5. Ruth Davidson 3. For presiding officer 5.
Stu.
I'll go for Alex. Yes, I'll go for a 9. I think he was very comfortable. He'd had a successful trade trip. He does have the proper international perspective on when he's standing there in the chamber of parish council, parliament, as somebody down in England called it when it was set up. But he does understand that it's important to keep very strong links with both the United States and China for the economic future of this country. And I was interested in telling us about Confucius universities, and I'm not exactly sure quite what that means, but apparently we've got 5 in Scotland, and that makes it a good thing. I was surprised nobody attacked him on that. He was also well spot on when he was picking up on the Westminster government's Professor James Crawford, his legal advisor. No, I thought he was extremely sharp, so when he gets the 9 for that. Joanne, I'll give her 1 to start with. but I'll add something to it. I'll give her one to start because she was actually dressed reasonably soberly. She wears these stupid
Like to
house
rephrase
coats.
that.
She wears these stupid house coats,
I'll
and
give her one.
I think my tone of voice was absolutely explicit. There was no pun intended.
Just checking.
And but as I think I have to agree with this, if you were just listening to her, she actually did come across. She was fairly flexible. She wasn't stuck with her script, and she must have had some, like, if Salmon says
Yeah, I think
yes here
for sure.
or no there,
For
she
sure.
knows where to go.
She-
A flow chart.
She had a flow chart.
That's true.
She has.
I bet that's right because
If
she's
he
looking
says-
down.
I'm sure it's scary
But
that she could be the
knows
First
where
Minister.
but she knows where to go because they did. She sounded as though they had really rehearsed it this time, which a lot of the times Joanne Lamont doesn't sound as though they've sat in their wee office with her advisors and rehearsed First Minister's
Yeah, I
questions.
agree
So
with that.
I'll give her 2 for that. So we're up to 3. Beyond that, I think she never got a real hit. What was her? Does anybody come up with what was her sound bite? I can't remember what it was meant to be.
Well, I think...
Call him a fool. She called him a fool. Oh well, we'll leave the sound bites
Well, she
out.
gave him a choice, didn't she? You can be
No.
a fool or agree with me.
Yeah.
We'll just stick at 3 for Joanne. Right, Alex, we've got Joanne. Ruth. Ruth. Well, basically, what I see has happened with Tories, and they've flown a kite. They've put a kite up by accusing the SNP government through one of their ministers of intimidating an academic. Now we, all around this table, know that that wasn't really the target of the attack. They've flown the kite and they've used the kite to come up with a straw dog argument, and that's what she used. To some extent, Alex was never able to turn around and do the usual thing, oh well, it's London's budget cuts that are causing all
No,
this,
sure.
causing all the pain, so she avoided that one, so I'll give her 4. Presiding officer, well, we noticed her. Do you go from 5 to 6 or down to 4? I'll go down to 4, because although she took command of the situation, then I still don't think she's nearly, the average school teacher would do better than she does for discipline.
I believe
What,
she was-
Joanne?
I believe she was an average school teacher.
Well, Tricia Marwick, the presiding officer I'm talking about.
So was Joanne, yeah.
Well, the average school teacher could have dealt with that better. They also ran.
So was Jean Grey.
Jenny Mara got criticised because she was going.
Shouting, obviously.
What was this? Somebody said something about cease and desist.
That was to Mahone, was it not?
Yeah.
Cease and desist.
Was it?
Yeah.
And I thought Michael Mara was her father, and he was just had died, and he was a
It's
singer-songwriter.
her uncle.
What's
Michael
another?
Mara, yeah.
Okay. Drew Smith, he came in. I thought he did well. He looked very smug when he sat down because he'd obviously rehearsed this question.
Yeah.
And given it's a published question, in other words, the First Ministers know it's coming and would be prepared for the first question. It's got to be the second question. I thought he did very well.
He did.
Sandra White, basically the shipbuilding issue came up again over in basically the Clyde.
Something out with Salmon's
That,
control, and they use it as a battering against these poor
well, I
buggers.
thought Sandra White, I thought that was a worthwhile question.
Yeah.
It was.
Oh,
It
yes.
was a reminder for everybody that it wasn't just the jobs on the Clyde
Yeah.
that were going to be affected. I did think...
Well, there's another good point, because I think Salmon drove that point home, that the opposition are politicising the whole
Yeah.
shipbuilding jobs thing.
As if
He's
it's
focusing,
Salmon's fault.
as his responsibility is, as First Minister, to try and protect or rescue the people, the jobs.
Right, but at the end of the day, you can't hide from the threat. The
No.
fact
Oh,
is,
no.
the threat needs to be dealt with.
Alex, no, I don't think he had his best day, I'm afraid. I think he stumbled a bit, went through his notes a bit. Still head and shoulders above. I mean, as we say often, he's First Division to their Third Division. But I'm only going to give him 7 this week.
Ooh.
I thought I was being mean at 8.
Jayla, Joanne, yeah, I mean, she did well. I really thought
You
she
shut
did
your eyes.
well. Point taken. She doesn't look good, with her eyes glued to the lectern. But
That's you're in the United Nations.
no, I'm actually gonna go one more than you guys. I'm gonna give her a 6
How can you say Salmon's only worth one more point than Lamont?
because he's in a different league, and I expect more of him.
Well,
than I
okay,
expect
that's
of
fine,
her.
as long as we understand
Yeah, 'cause
that.
it's
We're not
the-
comparing like with like then.
No, he's
Well-
grading. He's grading her as third grade points in third grade, and he's grading Salmon at
Well,
first
I mean,
grade.
I reckon she would have been worth the bench on a losing team, because I take your point that God help us if she ever becomes first
Oh.
minister.
I'm sure
Ruth,
she's a no, I'm sure she's a yes plan.
Ruth, that was fantasy land for me.
Oh,
And I'm
Well,
sorry.
it's just
Total-
they've
total-
been flying this kite on social media.
Well, she basically put herself on a rack of no gravitas, as far as I'm concerned.
That's a fair line.
nasty
She-
line Tory.
She basically, if she can't come up with something better than that, she's better doing a Willie Rennie and shutting up.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to give her, actually I'm going to give her a note. Presiding officer, I thought that was quite good. I thought she did well, telling Salmon to sit down, stops proceedings, get into Jenny Mara. No, I thought she did a competent job today, so I'm going to give her a 5.
Well, Norrie adds them up. Just a general point at the end here, rather than what happened in the chamber, but obviously the issues that happened mostly on social media or in the media. We were talking about media basically before we started recording, and the problems we have with the media in Scotland. The Craven Scotch, that to me seems to be the issue. You know, we're stuck with the media we've got. They trot off to London to get
They're
promoted jobs.
They're the
and they
gate-
come
they're-
back with a different
They're the,
attitude.
they're the gatekeepers, which unfortunately means, as I said earlier, and everything that was discussed today, is you know you're going to get the shitty end of the stick. Please don't add more shit to the stick. Stick to the script. Don't say if you can't say something that is totally defendable and can't be misconstrued. Don't say anything. That's my view.
But see what you were saying earlier about Brewer and all that, and I think as they're looking at the arithmetic as it gets nearer to next September, you'll probably get this odd, more probing question getting in. So they've got to look after themselves in the event of an independent Scotland, have they not?
I mean,
Oh.
the very fact that Ruth had to manufacture, as far as I'm concerned, a question
Oh.
today is proof to me that the vast majority of the yes side are on side with what you're saying. Do not set up targets for them to shoot at.
No.
Now, look, Wings Over Scotland yesterday, good point made, one of the guys wanted to do a cartoon of Sarwars with a pig's nose
Can't
in the
do
trough. And immediately, don't do it.
No,
Please don't
No,
do
it
it,
wasn't.
because it will be taken out of
Yeah,
context.
be used.
Give him a sheep's head.
Well,
Well, don't give them a.
You know.
Don't.
Just put
and-
Sarwar, that's
and I mean,
enough.
I do it myself when I'm
Mm.
cartooning.
Yeah, you have to think.
I have to think about. I mean, occasionally I do. It's actually quite funny. A lot is missed. The unions aren't the smartest candles. Sorry, the brightest candles on the cake. They miss an awful lot of the subtext that goes into the cartoon.
Today, I think one of the other points that Salmon made, which I thought was very good, was the question of you offered the choice. There might be in an independent Scotland, there could be a Labour government, and he made that point twice. And that's the first
Yeah,
time
we'll
I've
get
heard.
rid of
It's the
it.
first time I've heard him say that.
And he doesn't make it often enough. As I've said to you before,
That was bedroom tax.
The-
issue,
the-
wasn't it?
yeah, but there's an ad for the Yes campaign that says if you don't like this man with X face on it, vote
Yeah.
yes, because he's not what you're voting for.
But-
And he needs to stand up and say that.
But he
more
did it
often.
as a good dig to the Labour Party, says, because the bedroom tax will go basically if you've got an SNP government, right?
No, it's
Then
not.
put it
I'm-
straight back. That's
absolutely.
really, very good the
Probably,
way
and
that.
probably if you've got a Labour government.
It was
Only probably.
probably.
It was a good line.
If they can turn up to vote.
Right then, gentlemen, we've managed 40 minutes. I don't know
That's
how
more
many
than
people bother watching us for 40 minutes.
No.
Do you want the answers?
Oh yes, let's do the scores doors.
Coming in at the rear, shouldn't have said that. Ruth Davidson on 7, Joanne on 19, presiding officer on 18, Alex on 33, which indicates, as I say, it's a different league. But I do think I like to score him on his performance, not as against everybody
Yeah,
else.
well,
Yeah.
maybe we should all
Totally
agree.
fair.
Maybe we should all agree to do that a bit more clearly.
Well, and we're all looking forward to the white paper being released. What is it, a week on Monday or something that comes out, I think.
Yeah.
So that should be
And
interesting.
it better be good.
It had better be good.
It better
I
be
mean,
good.
we've been sitting and waiting, as he said, comprehensively. They're like, you know, it's all those words he's using to say every one of your questions will be answered, and I doubt it. Actually.
Well, every one of the questions won't be answered.
Well, I'm of the opinion, judging by, for example, Salmon's, you know, offering the idea that the first independent Scottish government could be Labour, and that point has to be driven home.
Yeah.
And I suspect in the meetings they've had about this white paper, these kind of angles that we've discussed for long enough are finally being listened to at the top of the SNP.
But
So-
as a Labour Party member, if I was a betting person, I would say it would be at least 2 elections before you would see Labour Party, because the first thing they would do would a really good impersonation of ferrets in a sack, and they'd be kicking 10 bells out of each other.
Well, that's a thought. Thank you.
Which is why I'm leaving the website. Bugger.
Thank you, Phil Attridge, Labour Party member and former councillor. Thank you, Norrie Stewart, political cartoonist and general troublemaker, and Alex Bell,
Alex Bell.
Alex Grant.
Fucking no Alex Bell.
Well, it's a whiskey, so it's fine. He's just
that's
got
fine,
confused.
it's all.
It's a confusion between Grant's and Bell's whiskey, excuse me.
Right. I'll let you off. I'd rather not be Alex Bell.
No, I'd prefer to have a glass.
Yeah, but
whiskey
how
myself.
can you get confused between grants and
No, I'd
bells?
take a Grant's any day.
Oh dear.
Thank you very much.
Aye, good
And
night.
for myself, Stuart Lockhead, thanks for watching and listening, and goodbye.